Hey everyone, this is Uri for Gorilla Poker with another viewer-requested high-stakes hand history review between Davy Jones and Nacho. My thanks to the viewer for recommending this hand. Ever since viewers have started recommending some hands, we're getting spicier, more interesting ones. So please guys, if there's anything you'd like reviewed in the channel, go ahead and send it over. Our hand begins blind versus blind. Davy Jones opens to $300 from the small blind. Nacho 3-bets to $900 and Davy Jones makes the call. Pretty standard stuff so far. We get an ace-queen-5 two-tone board. Like always, you need to pause and think, who's this board good for? On the surface, this board would be good for the 3-better. You know, high cards are good for the 3-better. Blind versus blind, it's always a little bit different due to the fact that the 3-better is 3-betting kind of a bunch of junky hands just due to the nature of these positions. Big blind will 3-bet very polarized, and he's 3-betting from the bottom of his calling range, and that's a lot of pretty junky stuff. So blind versus blind specifically, this is less necessarily the dynamic than in other positions. But still, I think a very strong board for the big blind, who's the only one with ace-king. He has more ace-queen, so very, very strong board for him. So we see Davy Jones check. Nacho fires, 30-ish% c-bet, probably betting his entire range, and Davy makes the call. Turn 4 of diamonds. Again, always good to think, who does the card favor? It's definitely not improving much of Nacho's range. For Davy Jones, this would improve 4-5 suited, ace-4 suited, and potentially pocket 4s if you thought he's peeling flop with pocket 4s, maybe 4s with a spade or something like that. So Davy Jones improves a little bit, Nacho doesn't improve at all. It's always a bit relevant to how aggressive you get to be. Turn goes check-check, river king of diamonds, and again, if you think about how this card interacts with the ranges, both players are going to hit the king. Davy could have called flop with something like king high spades or king 10 or king jack, and now river a king. Nacho, similarly, he might have c-bet flop with some hand with a king and now improves to a pair of kings, but also specifically pocket kings and king queen are very present in his range to bet small flop check back turn, and those hands improve. So it's a very non-innocent card. If Davy Jones has something like an ace-9, the king just improves a lot of Nacho's range, so ace-9 couldn't go as big as it would be on, say, a 7 or an 8. And here Davy Jones decides to make an unusual bet sizing choice. He goes for a 10% pot-sized bet. Now, this is something you don't see often, but we are starting to see it more and more at the high-stakes tables these days. The idea is pretty much, if a hand is worth 10% and you're out of position, it's often better to bet 10% pot than to check it. This is a concept I cover in one of my courses in Redline Rocket Ship when I cover the bet check bet game. You can find that course on upswingpoker.com. But yeah, I think 10% bet here kind of makes sense from a game theory perspective. I know it looks funny, but when you see the bet, all you need to think is, which hand does this bet size fit? Is an ace worth 10%? Probably not. Is a queen worth 10%? Is a king worth 10%? Where's the cutoff point? And here I would guess it's somewhere between a queen and a king. Like, if you think about it, imagine Davy Jones has king 10. Can he bet 1/3 pot? Maybe, maybe not. But if he has queen 10, certainly not, and maybe he thinks that hand is still worth a 10% pot bet. So something of this sort is going on in terms of like what you should be thinking when you face a small bet is what's the value threshold, and given most players are not too tricky, but even if they were, the range you would see is, the perfect hands that fit this value threshold, and some traps, and some bluffs, but not very many bluffs because it's a 10% bet size. So you can't bluff much or the other guy just prints calling you. Okay, so hand gets even spicier with Nacho coming in for the min raise. All I have to say about this is, Davy Jones's 10% bet is technically very solid. It's maybe tough to balance, so a lot of guys doing this will have their range skewed one way or the other. but it's a solid GTO sizing. Nacho, on the other hand, is not understanding what's going on here. His min raise is not something you should ever be doing in this situation. It's completely out of the GTO realm of plays. And the reason is that you are reopening the action in position for a very small reward, right? So reopening the action means if DavyJones has a trap, he now gets to 3-bet you. So if DavyJones has something like Jack 10, he put it in his trap range, you min raise, he gets to fire a big 3-bet. That's obviously not good for you. So when you develop your raising range, it's never based around hands that can only go this thin, and the raise size should always be bigger. Now this is something evidently either Nacho does not fully understand, or he does understand it and he's just, thinking Davy's full of shit and he's gonna rebluff him as cheap as possible. Again, not knowing Nacho personally, I don't know which one it is, but certainly way out of line in terms of theory play. And yet the spiciness is not over yet, because DavyJones ends up making the call. And we see 6-7 of spades from Nacho for the cheap bluff. Like I said, I think, not the sizing he should take. He should just do something big. And DavyJones with a Jack 9 of spades. So for sure a bluff in the first place, but after bluffing and getting raised, he decides to flick in a call. This is a bit odd. Okay, so generally, when you bluff and you get raised, you don't call your bluff. That's not something that you're generally supposed to be doing. Now, here with DavyJones bluffing and getting min raised, certainly he's supposed to call a ton of his range, but not from the bluffing region, in theory, if you would call it that. That being said, if he thinks Jack 9 is beating every single bluff in Nacho's range, which it probably is. So if Jack 9 is beating every single bluff, it becomes a legitimate bluff catcher. It's a really tiny raise, and then, you need to call most of your bluff catchers, right? Because he's risking 300 to win 3,800. But the main question is Jack 9 of spades an actual bluff catcher in this situation? Could Nacho not have bluffed with some Jack 9 of his own? Could he have not bluffed with something like 5-6 suited? Because remember, DavyJones's value betting range is starting at a queen or a king. So Nacho could pick 5-6 suited or some hand like that to bluff. And then calling with Jack 9, the hand would look even more ridiculous than it already does. Overall, if you ask me, this is not a call that you're supposed to be making. If your range is weighted as value heavy as it should be when you make this 10% river bet, you can find enough calls from the value region and not need to really go this deep. I don't think this accomplishes anything. Kind of interesting hand again in terms of what's going on at high stakes. People are certainly mixing up some concepts here, mixing up some sizings. I think mixing up the call frequency. And who knows, Nacho raising to 650, maybe he meant to go 6,500 and his just a misclick and it went 650 instead. We're never going to know unless one of these players jumps in to tell us. If you guys are watching, that would certainly be appreciated. What was your actual thought process in the hand, specifically on the river? Either way, really fun hand to see. Hopefully, after my explanation, you guys can see that it's not as crazy as it looks, although, it does include at least one blunder and possibly two in terms of how the hand was played. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed it. Like and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you next time.